All right, folks, welcome back for another review of Fear the Walking Dead, episode 15, coming out of season 7, Amina. And this episode truly focuses on Alicia and everything that's going on with her, her health, and this last little bit of heroic that she has going on here, because as the synopsis says, the survivors prepare to escape the area by raft. Alicia turns back to save one more person trapped in the fallout. The fallout being the tower, that because the tower was set on fire by her, folks had to get out of there. The folks that were on their side and whatnot. And all the trans folks that were still trying to put up another fight. Either way, everybody has to go. But while everybody on Alicia's side, now that she's kind of taken, the throne, she's sort of the head of everything that Morgan, left with Baby Mo. There's that, but Alicia turns around because she has to go back and find someone who is trapped in the fallout or the tower. Before we get to that, let's focus on Alicia's mental state and physical state and just health period. The fever is the big question now, and everybody wants to know, how are you still alive? Why haven't you turned? You've been bit. You have this fever you can't shake. This fever is typically something that most people who have turned has experienced. But nonetheless, you've been bit. You lost your arm. You having this constant fever. What is it? What do you make of this? So here's the thing. Anybody who's experienced the fever know that like she's having very, should I say, traditional symptoms of a fever. Her brains are scrambled like scrambled eggs, and beyond it, she's also battling an infection. So like her fatigue, she's trying to channel more strength than she actually really have, and she's constantly falling out. So like she's battling this infection for a long time, and they're trying everything to try to get that cured and whatever it may be. Shran tried his hand. She's been trying different things. Like I said, she's tried everything, but she still continuously battling it. And at this point now, with her mental state of things, it's pretty hard to tell what's real and what she's imagining, because she had this whole power drink thing going on. That was really a trip in its own, put a lot of people at risk, and she was so convinced it was so real. But at the same time too, she kind of came to the realization like maybe she might have been imagining these things and whatnot. And then you got commentary from all the other different folks kind of saying like, hey, that may not be real, or like, hey, Alicia, we know you're passionate in what you're trying to accomplish here, but like, it's hard to kind of get behind her when you're not really understanding or seeing what she's seeing. But she's constantly passing out, and now she's seeing visions of the dead, which to me is like, all right, well, not much longer before she turns, you know what I mean? But there's this little girl that she's seen come on the beach side, and while everybody's getting ready for the raft, she's just like, wait, who is this? She instantly thinks, because she puts out the signal at the tower, that this is somebody that heard it, that is trying to, get to safety and ultimately, try to find shelter along with Alicia and the group and whatnot. But is this little girl real, or is this Alicia's as unconsciously, or should I say subconscious, in sort of a visual state? That's sort of the battle of this episode, is understanding what does this little girl represent. First of all, this little masked girl played by Aniston Allman, I thought she did a really dope job. I was really digging this character for what it's worth, and something about her charm and her wit kind of had me a little bit interested. Kind of thinking like, what, a character like that would have did really well in World Beyond. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, that's sort of the thing. Like this masked girl, is she real, or is she just another illusion by Alicia, or is this like a visual form of her subconscious, which is a thing in its own, you know what I mean? And you start to also look at Alicia's condition. You say, this is kind of worse than Daniel's at this point, you know what I mean? Like, she's really like out on the limb with her beliefs of the things she thinks she's seeing and whatnot. But anyway, everybody's trying to get to the rafts, and they're trying to get to the rafts because they're also trying to get on the rafts and get on the water before the walkers from the towers get to them. Before the walkers get to the towers, because if the walkers get to the towers and then they catch on fire, then all the ones that have been chemically exposed will then get that radiation back in the air. And that's just another level of contamination and obviously issue that everybody has to deal with. You know what I mean? But Alicia needs to find this girl to find Padre. Here we go again, folks. This whole Padre thing. But the interesting thing about the girl initially is because with her not wanting to take her mask off, you know, it really doesn't help the viewers, us, really believe that this is real, you know? And I feel like this is just, again, her subconscious is working for her, you know, her trying to find purpose to just do what, you know, her little side missions all the time. It's really hard to kind of get behind her when she's acting in this manner, you know what I mean? And then you start to try to look from her from a mental standpoint, and it's like, listen, you done did your job. You got the people from the tower, you got the people to the raft, you're eventually going to get them to safety, you know, and I'll say it in a second, but like, we also know that there potentially is a place for folks to go, you know, like, because people heard the message, you know, we see a newcomer there, a real physical newcomer, because everybody's like, hey, he heard the message, he's here, you know what I mean? But like, what more do you have to do, Alicia? I don't get it, but that's the thing. Now, again, back on the trail for Padre, her mental is just all over the place. And she, you know, it's a lot to kind of put on right here. Like, first of all, let's just go to the other thing I was going to say. Like, Morgan, we now heard from Morgan. So there's some good news on that, because Morgan has good news. And we always, you know, the viewers kind of wonder, like, what's next for Morgan? Is he still going to be around this season and whatnot? Because they kind of seem like they kind of wrote him off. But we heard from Morgan, we seen Morgan, and now Morgan has good news in terms of destination. Again, Alicia's mission has been fulfilled, if you ask in my eyes, you know what I mean? But she's just really not in a good space, because she's seeing the dead, she's trying to help this girl, she's starting to have some moments of channeling back to her family and with her mother. And I have to say, if they had not had those rumors now confirmed, news about Madison returning, this episode would have felt a lot different to me about her visualing her mother. I mean, everything that's happening in this episode truly to me is just like, oh, Alicia's done. She's absolutely done. And like, you know, seeing it dead, thinking about her mother, thinking about where she's came from, thinking about her mother's mission and her mother's sacrifice and how she's trying to kind of channel that in her own. It starts to make me think, like, you know, and then not to mention, like, folks gave Alicia her flowers. She's being super, super hard on herself. And the fact that everybody on the team was kind of giving her flowers for everything that she's done thus far for everybody, I was like, oh boy, this is going to be a crazy write-off here, you know, whether she dies or whether she turns, whatever it may be. I don't know. But it's just a lot going on with Alicia and the character. Now, I gotta say, the one thing that really annoyed me about this episode is the idea of heroicism. You got this whole master scheme and plan in order to save everybody, and everything's going right. And then when you go and do these things to try to set everybody up for success, then you turn around and you're like, all right, go without me. And it's just, I don't understand that dynamic, because when you look at how this episode's constructed, Alicia had every opportunity to do everything she wanted to do, plus get on a raft and go. Instead, she's kind of like, get on a raft and go, and I'm just going to do my thing and whatnot. So I don't know. The last bit of heroicism that she does upon the person that she goes back to the tower to save, this little girl plus, is also a very interesting thing as well too. I have to say, between the conversations that her and Sharon had last episode really gave me a lot of heart for him and her and them together. And so a lot of the decisions made in this episode sort of made sense. And besides the heroicism of like, go on the raft without me and whatnot. And then the connection with her and this little girl was truly special. And it confirmed a lot of what I already suspected early in this episode. I guess we learned a little bit more about this infection that she has. I mean, a little bit more, but still major questions, because I'm still confused as to what these visions mean for her actual health. Unless it's just safe to say that, oh, well, just give it a little bit of time and then things kind of just washes away, I guess. I don't know. But nonetheless, you know, this episode did build a lot in terms of where this can go going forward, because I gotta say, like, the very end of this episode, I don't know, it's just some interesting things to kind of put together. I'm very intrigued, but yet I'm also a little bit confused now, because the whole, and then again, the Madison thing is, everybody wants to know, how is that going to work? Separation of the group one where Alicia another place, Morgan's another place, questions, and then we know Madison's coming. It's just a lot of things I'm still trying to piece together here. But nonetheless, for this episode, I think, like, I just gained more appreciation for Alicia, but also got a little bit more reserved for her, because now I'm starting to question a little bit about her decision making. I liked how the characters all gave her flowers to really help us remember the things that she's done throughout these entire 7 seasons, and you know, and how much she's also lost, the sacrifices she's lost, her family and whatnot, and Madison's coming back confirmed, but like, she's been through a lot, and her being in the leadership position makes sense, but like, she still has a lot she had to really unload for herself to actually really make that position work. So it's a lot to kind of going on with Alicia, but I don't know, man. It's on to the next episode for me, because some things need to be cleared up, and I need this next episode to truly focus on her again, because it's hard to make sense to what she's done at this point at the end of this episode. You know what I mean? And what does it mean for her health going forward? Are these things fixed, or are we still dealing with the same thing? So we will see. I don't know, folks. Let me know in the comments your thoughts, your theories about this episode. This episode definitely was stirring the pot a little bit, and I got questions, but I want to know what you all think. But anyway, stay tuned for another review of Fear the Walking Dead next week.